Kia ora, hello, I'm Philip Duncan. It is Wednesday, the 8th of October. Thank you so much for joining me. Believe it or not, we've got some high pressure to the north of the country. That is moving slowly eastwards over the next couple of days. And once it finally does move out to our east, it's going to pull down subtropical wind and air across the country. At the moment, plenty of cloud along the western side of New Zealand, some thicker, higher cloud here in the yellow as it moves on through, and we've got a couple of isolated thunderstorms around parts of Westland and still some wet weather around Fiordland, a little bit spilling over here and there. But really, we're in a slight transition phase at the moment where the weather is not quite as extreme as it's been, but we've still got some unsettled weather on the way. Of course, we're in spring. Now, the high pressure zone that's north of New Zealand is also spreading up into tropical areas, so around Fiji, Tonga, even Vanuatu, getting a slightly cooler airflow and humidity down a wee bit as it sends up a bit of a southerly breeze there. So thunderstorms are well offshore and even out to our east around Rarotonga and out towards French Polynesia. A lot of those thunderstorms and downpours are currently out at sea. So let's make sense of what I've just talked about. There's the big controlling high pressure zone north of New Zealand, sending a drier southerly right up to Tonga, Fiji, Vanuatu and New Caledonia. That airflow curves around and comes down into Fiordland, which is why we're seeing all that cloud and some wet weather at the moment. So as this high moves eastwards over the next couple of days, the warmer airflow will start to move in around the country. So we've still got, as I said, a bit of a windy westerly around some parts of New Zealand today, but all the energy is really down here. A very large area, huge area of low pressure stretching, right across south of Australia to south of New Zealand and southeast of New Zealand. So while this large area of low pressure churns away south of us, the high puts a lid on it all. And as you well know, that's where the windy weather is, in between those two systems. Most of it is coming in for Tasmania, but we've still got blustery conditions on the way. Now, if you don't like frosts at this time of the year, I've got a bit of good news for you. Pretty much disappearing tomorrow, and by Friday, really nothing. Okay, that little tiny bit there is at the top of a mountain. So we're not seeing frosts coming through over the next few days or going into the weekend, thanks to the windier, warmer weather that is going to develop. So I'll break it down for you. Here is 1 o'clock Thursday. The high is moving from north of the country to north of the Chatham Islands, northeast of the mainland. And so as that moves further out to the east, the warmer airflow out here starts to come on through. So it is a bit windy thanks to the high out here that is getting a bit more powerful. It's growing, getting stronger, and south of it all those storms. So the storms aren't roaring up towards us, we're in between them. And so windy weather starts to kick in further on Thursday once more, and west coast rain or showers start to arrive, a couple of showers for the North Island, and dry at the top of New Zealand and along the eastern side, and inland areas also looking dry on Thursday. By Friday, a narrow area of wet weather. There may be some heavy falls or a thunderstorm or two stuck in that zone. Windy westerlies coming through, but they are subtropical. That's why the map is showing you the subtropical area, because that's where our airflow is coming from. Passes over Tonga, New Caledonia, Vanuatu, and curves around as a northwesterly wind for the North Island and for some parts of the South Island. And if you don't have that airflow, it's still coming from either north of New Zealand or out of the Australian region. So it's pretty mild on Friday, especially around the North Island, as those winds continue to blow on through, and they'll be strongest in central New Zealand, basically from Canterbury up to about Hawke's Bay, Waited Upper. Those are the areas with the strongest nor'westers, and they don't stop on Saturday. In fact, Saturday they might be windier in some areas. The high up here still pretty much in the same spot, but it may be just drifting back to the west a little bit. Central air pressure has weakened a tiny amount, but not very much. So we're in the subtropical winds or the Australian nor'westers coming through around New Zealand. West coast rain and showers, eastern and northern and southern areas are looking mostly dry, although there is the next cold front coming into Tassie, and that's going to slowly move in towards New Zealand as we go on towards Saturday night time. So you might get some showers down here around Southland overnight, because by lunchtime Sunday, back to the polar boundary, returning. So Southland, parts of Otago, especially Western Otago, Fiordland, Southwestland, temperatures down, dusting of snow back on the mountains, don't worry too much. And then further northwards, windier weather continues, still got strong to gale force, maybe severe gale in some areas, west to northwesterlies. So keep up to date with the Met Service, because over the coming days they may have some wind warnings in the mix. High pressure is still right next to the North Island, so there is no significant change from the weather we're getting now to the weather we're getting on Sunday, except the temperature will go up a little bit and the winds will pick up more as we go through the weekend. So next week, spring still with us, still unsettled. Here is the next colder change. So it moves further up the country than it did on Sunday. It's not necessarily a big, cold front that's sweeping up the nation, but it is surging past the South Island. In fact, look at the polar boundary is really significant in this map. Quite a large area of it on the back of all that low pressure moving through. So we've got windy nor'westers that are fairly mild in the North Island, a cold front coming through here, a few thunderstorms or heavy downpours as that comes on through, and behind it, that is the cold change or cooler change, depending on how you view it, as that moves on through. So unsettled weather as we kick off next week. By Tuesday, most of that wet weather is going to the north, and now we're starting to see what I call the ceiling of high pressure, kind of a line of high pressure coming out of Australia, and then it carries on to our north and off here to our east. And so that puts a lid on how far the lows to our south can roar up, and it continues the westerly flow. Perhaps a bit of a break here on Tuesday from the strongest of those winds, but as you can see, looking back over towards Tassie, more windy weather is on the way, not completely done just yet. So there are quite a few moving parts to our weather over the coming week. Here is the cumulative rainfall map for the next 7 days. So classic spring westerly setup, heaviest rain right along the west coast, and some of that spills over into the North Island's western zone as well. But those are Northland, Auckland, Coromandel, actually Bay of Plenty as well, really, and then all the way down the eastern side of the country, those rainfall totals are between 0 and about 10, maybe 15 millimetres and more of the darker blue. So not a lot of rain coming for those eastern areas, which is why they continue to dry out, really. So we'll be monitoring that closely over the coming weeks. That's all from me for today. Thank you for joining me. I'll be back again tomorrow, Thursday, with our next New Zealand update.